It's 73 BC. From high above the Mediterranean, the world looks settled. But if we plunge through the clouds and zoom into the Italian peninsula, all the way into the shadows of a training cell in Capua, we find the start of a 3-year war that Rome never fully explained. Above this cell sits the Roman Republic. Its legions have already crushed Carthage and conquered Greece. Rome controls the known world, and at this moment, it fears absolutely nothing. Inside that cell, a Thracian slave named Spartacus makes a decision. In the spring of 73 BC, he and 78 fellow gladiators break out of their training school. They have no armor. They raid the school's kitchen, arming themselves with meat cleavers and roasting spits before disappearing into the countryside. Rome's response is dismissive. A slave revolt is seen as a police action, not a war. One Roman praetor sneered at the news, deciding to send only a local militia because he expected the matter to be finished within a week. That arrogance was Rome's fatal flaw. By treating these 78 men as a routine property dispute, the Republic gave a brilliant leader the time he needed to build an army. The escaped slaves flee to the slopes of Mount Vesuvius. Rome finally sends 2 legions to blockade the only path down the mountain. The Romans camp at the base and wait to starve them into submission, certain that the sheer volcanic cliffs around the rebels are impassable. Spartacus responds with a masterstroke. He orders his men to weave ropes from wild vines growing on the slopes. In the dead of night, they lower themselves down a sheer, jagged cliff face that the Romans had completely ignored. They hit the sleeping legions from the rear, capturing their weapons, their armor, and their pride. The legend of the free gladiator spreads through the slave population of southern Italy with the speed of fire. Within months, the 78 fugitives become 10,000, then 70,000, and eventually a force of 120,000 men. This was a coalition of the desperate. Field slaves came with scythes. Shepherds brought their crooks. Former soldiers enslaved in Rome's wars brought the muscle memory of killing and formation. Spartacus had to lead men from a dozen different nations, speaking different languages, all burning with different grievances. When his commander Crixus split from the main force and was killed by a Roman legion, Spartacus halted his entire army. He forced 300 Roman prisoners to fight each other to the death as gladiators over Crixus's funeral pyre. By forcing Roman citizens to bleed for the entertainment of slaves, Spartacus dismantled the foundational social order of the Republic. He proved that the masters could be turned into property. Through 72 BC, Spartacus defeated every army Rome threw at him. He marched his force to the very foot of the Alps. Freedom was a few days' march away. They only had to cross these peaks to return to their homelands. Then, at the threshold of freedom, Spartacus stopped. He turned his army around and marched back into the heart of Italy. On this map, the decision looks like a suicide note. The army halted at the northern Alps, then completely reversed course to drive into the southern toe of Italy. A 2019 study by historians at the University of Edinburgh suggests this was a final strategic gamble. Spartacus may have been trying to reach the southern ports to hire pirate ships and evacuate his entire army by sea. But the gamble gave Rome time to find its most ruthless general, Marcus Licinius Crassus. The wealthiest man in the Republic, Crassus took command of 8 new legions with one simple order: victory or death. To ensure obedience, Crassus used decimation. When a unit retreated, he executed every 10th man in that unit by lottery. He proved to his soldiers that he was more terrifying than the slave army they were fighting. Turning away from the Alps committed the rebellion to a collision course with the full weight of the Roman state. There was no longer a path for escape, only the total destruction of one side or the other. Crassus used his wealth to build a logistical weapon. He constructed a 55-kilometer wall and ditch across the entire width of Italy, pinning Spartacus against the sea. On a freezing winter night, Spartacus ordered his men to fill sections of that ditch with earth, timber, and the corpses of their horses. They broke through Crassus's wall by force, but a third of the army was lost in the crossing. Even with the wall behind them, the trap was closing. Fresh Roman reinforcements were now arriving from Spain and the east, converging on the rebels in a pincer movement. On a field in Apulia in 71 BC, Spartacus made his final choice. He killed his own horse before the battle, telling his men they would have plenty of horses if they won, and would need none if they lost. He led a suicidal charge on foot, fighting directly toward Crassus. By choosing this final, head-on collision, Spartacus seized control of his fate. He refused to die as property, choosing instead to fall as a soldier. Spartacus was finally cut down in the brutal melee. his body lost forever among the tens of thousands of dead. Because he was never found, Rome was denied the satisfaction of a public execution or a victory parade. Crassus took his revenge on those who survived. He crucified 6,000 slaves along the Appian Way, one cross every 40 meters for 200 kilometers. The bodies were left to hang for months as a message to every traveler heading toward Rome. Yet the rebellion left a lasting tension in Roman society. For the next century, the Republic quietly and systematically improved the conditions of its slave population, driven by the persistent fear that another Spartacus might rise. Spartacus did not break Rome, but he made the empire flinch. A gladiator who started with a kitchen knife built an army that defeated 6 Roman legions, proving that even the most powerful state cannot fully extinguish the impulse to be free. Fade to black.